Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman Super Fighting Robot. In the last part we started off the game and took out a few robot masters in the process, and now we're heading after Leafman, because axes cut down trees, and that's the actual chain of logic for this particular weakness. Though I didn't actually go this order in my original playthrough. When I first played the game, I got the first two bosses completely right in order, because I went after Wizard Man and got Rush Jet. And then I went after Dagger Man just completely coincidentally. After that, if I'm recalling correctly, I went to Soakman after that because I figured maybe he'd be balloon-based and I could pierce him with the dagger. And then go on from there, but no, that weakness changed when I eventually got to Leafman after getting the fire weapon. I was just flat out wrong. First playthroughs of Mega Man games are always interesting to watch because very rarely do they get every boss weakness right, but it's always just an interesting learning process. Now this stage, the closest thing I can compare it to is that what if Plant Man stage from 6 met Search Man stage with 8 and you threw a bit of water in it every here and there. The biggest enemy that we're going to be running into a lot throughout this stage is that little... Oh, what was the Gen 4 Pokemon's name that changed its hide depending on where you found it? Burmy, I think? That when you shoot them, they split off into 8 shots going generally diagonal directions, and that is surprisingly hard to avoid them. Also, I think this is one of the few Mega Man games I've played, official or otherwise, that has water outside of just the water stage prior to the eventual castles. And that's just kind of odd to me. Also, Giant Axe, the one we got from Axeman at the end of the last part, can also destroy the enemies that are otherwise invincible to other things, such as the little scissor things we just saw, or the giant axes from Axeman's very stage. So it's very useful to use those in stage, overall. Generally speaking, this game has fairly useful special weapons. They did better than certain even mainline Mega Man games in terms of that regard. But overall, similarly to Metal Blades from Mega Man 2, you'll often see me using the Magic Missile more than anything because it just kills things so quickly, and the homing means I can just not worry about getting hit overall. This mini-boss just outright aims at you with its little explosive pellets, and it'll also occasionally shoot out another pellet from its eyes that will hit you when you're trying to hit it back. So you need to make sure you watch where you're going carefully with this fight. Otherwise, you're going to take a bunch of stupid damage like I just did. Now, something I haven't mentioned yet is that Super Fighting Robot has quite a few difficulty options for those who either find the base mode too easy or too hard. There's at least like 3 easy difficulties. I think they go easy, easier, easiest. And then there's hard mode, which I think is either the max difficulty at the start or you only unlock after beating normal mode. And then there is, for beating, I believe, hard mode, insane mode. The biggest difference from what I'm aware with that is damage values. But I do believe bosses gain new attacks on Insane Mode. Additionally, I think they get overall faster on each subsequent difficulty. Insane Mode is a bit of a wonder to watch, especially when it comes to the special menu that you may have seen on the main menu thus far. What that is, it's essentially a boss mode. Not boss rush, just boss mode. You can choose to fight whichever boss throughout the game you wanted, including certain secret bosses you can only unlock after doing certain things, like beating hard mode or insane mode for that matter. You also get ranked depending on how well you do those fights. Like I think getting a perfect run gets you 5 stars. And I think you can use your weaknesses in order to get the max of 5 stars, but honestly, boss modes like that are so often on my list of things to do in any game ever that I've barely bothered with it. I'd have to rewatch Rome's LP of the game, honestly, to see if I remember you even get anything for doing it. This is weird. I love Mega Man. It's my favorite franchise ever, but I seldom go out of my way to do everything for a game. Like, you'll never see me going for every achievement in 10, 9, 11, any of that. I love these games, but I love them in a casual sense. I don't want to take these games too seriously. Either way, we're on to Leafman, who is, guess this week against the Giant Axe. Early on in the fight, he likes to jump up and fire his Leaf Blade at you, which is a little bit of a boomerang type that comes back. But after he fires the second one, he's going to try and jump and land directly on top of you, at which point he's going to try and follow you like that, and then do this little Vine Whip attack that'll shoot out some thorns, and then do a jump, firing more thorns at you. In which case, then the fight loops. At the end of the day, a surprisingly dangerous boss fight if you don't have his weakness, but if you do, well, you saw how quick that went by. And for beating him, we get one of my favorite weapons in the game. Not as good as Magic Missile, but it is very good all the same. I believe it's just called Leaf Blade? Leaf Boomerang. As the name suggests, you shoot a leaf forward that goes about half the screen's length and then comes back to you. If it encounters an item along the way, it will come back with it. And when it comes back to you, it'll actually recycle half of the weapon energy used for it. So that's pretty useful. And now we take a bit of a note out of the Battle Network weakness chain, and we're heading after Zapman. I love this song. This is probably my least favorite stage from during my first playthrough, though, as while Axeman stage did damage, I at least had the resources to back it up at that point, because I had died enough to the point where I had enough bolts to have bought a full set of E-tanks, and even a good amount of extra lives along the way. The main gimmick with this stage is these electric balls. Whenever they're shot out of the little diodes, they go to wherever you are in altitude, and then they split off in the two horizontal directions, though. Whenever they touch the pink blocks in the stage, though, that entire chain of electric pink blocks gets electrified and becomes a source of damage all at once. Additionally, we got little magnet enemies that are kind of the inverse of the ones from the start of Magnet Man stage in Mega Man 3. They can either pull you down into them or blow you away from them, depending on what color they are. They're blue, they're blowing. If they're red, they're sucking. Spaceballs joke here that I do not care to make right now because I've got other things to worry about. I feel like some people would argue that Magic Missile might be too broken, especially even compared to the Metal Blades, considering Metal Blades, yeah, you could throw them in any eight directions, but they would lock into that. They couldn't switch directions on you mid-flight. My response to that is mostly, I think Magic Missile has less ammo than Metal Blades ever did. Even if you have the thing that doubles your weapon count, I think it still has less ammo than Metal Blades ever did. Plus, Metal Blades was overall faster, I think, in terms of just the pure movement speed of it all. And here we have a little spin-off, the pink electric blocks, background ones, that if you're touching, you still will get damaged. I'm just thankful this isn't an instant death mechanic, because I know very well that in some other game, it would have been an instant kill. Namely, probably, you know what, X6 probably would do that. Although I can't tell if that's just me being fair to that game, or just really, God, that game had a lot of problems. You know, to this day, I don't know why I decided to go after every Reploid in that LP. It was almost a waste of my time, but at the same time, I at least got to feel like I did a complete playthrough of it compared to some other playthroughs where they barely even got a third of them. One thing I will say about Super Fighting Robot, though, that I like, especially just due to the fact that there's more difficulty options in this game in total, despite the high damage you can take, especially during, like, Axeman stage, I think Super Fighting Robot's base difficulty makes for one of the easier, Mega Man fan games. So if you're trying to get into this type of game, I'd say this is a pretty good one to start with. Because most of the ones that are, like, very popular generally are meant more for Mega Man aficionados, and thus, they're generally harder and meant for more veteran-type players to get into. Mega Man Unlimited and its extraordinarily long stage length comes into mind. So does some of the optional stuff in Rock Force and Mega Man Rock and Roll, despite me absolutely loving the game. Definitely has its share of, oh god, oh god, oh god, it's scary. I'd say roughly I'd equate this to Mega Man 4, maybe, in difficulty. Very fair, but it has its moments where you can be like, oh god, I'm afraid of everything. Though the only case of that really only ever comes to mind in Mega Man 4 is some of the Cossack stages, now that I think about it. Especially the stage with the... I want to say it was like Cossack 1 or 2. The one that had like the Moth enemy as the boss fight, who you need to use the Ring Man weapon against. I hate that boss fight. I think assisting this game's good difficulty curve is something that I think some games struggle to get right, at least in their initial release. Checkpoints. There's enough checkpoints in each level in this game for the length of them that if you die, you don't lose too much progress, and if you do lose a decent chunk of progress, it's still not too frustrating due to how learnable these stages are, compared to certain other games where, due to the length of the stages, there's so few checkpoints that even if you die a lot and start learning, there's still so much more to learn that you almost feel extraordinarily defeated. And yes, this is me talking about Mega Man Unlimited's extraordinarily long stages again. Seriously, what the hell? It's a good game. Great boss fights. Yoku Man stage is a bit of a thing. But, god damn Mega Phil X. I think I brought this up even in Super Fighting Robot. I know he's working on another project of sorts right now. I'm wondering how that's going to turn out compared to Unlimited in a lot of things. We're coming up on Zapman, though, and his fight is arguably one of the easiest without his weakness. With his weakness, it's not too much easier, but it's still easier. He's this game's shield user. He's going to be using his shield to run around the field at extraordinary speeds. However, unlike other shield users, I think his shield actually makes him not only faster, but completely invincible. He likes to shoot a couple of zap shots at you, which then return. He'll zap himself, which will cause some more pellets to come out, and then he'll just dash all over the place with his shield, trying to hit you with physical attacks. Then he fires 2 shots in the air, which will try to home in on you, but are generally so slow that you don't have to worry about them too much. And for beating him, we get that very zap barrier attack. You engulf yourself in an entire ring of electricity, which hits enemies a bit similarly to Alfred's Ring of Fire ability from Curse of the Moon, for those who just watched that LP. It hits several times. It's not too strong on its own, but the biggest thing about this is that you are completely invincible while the animation is going on. You can also spam fire to just keep a consistent chain of invincibility going throughout the entire weapon gauge. I think it also speeds you up slightly, but I can't tell if that's my brain playing tricks on me. Alright, continuing the Battle Network weakness chain. What's good in water? Electricity. Well, it's not so good in water. It's deadly in water, but either way. Soakman stage might just be isn't my favorite. It's definitely a very solid water level. The big thing to know is that while, yes, you have the underwater physics while you're underwater, you jump higher and you're generally slower. If you're ever near one of those waterfalls, like the one we just saw on that previous screen, you are getting actively pushed down whenever you're in its sprite. So you need to carefully time your jumps, otherwise you might get pushed into some spikes later on in this very stage. Also, I know these enemies are called Washmos only because of something we'll see like in part 3 or 4. Magic Missile makes this stage a bit easier because those little homing enemies, they get split up into 2 smaller versions whenever you hit them with your Mega Buster, but Magic Missile will just automatically home into them. Head left here, by the way, for the letter for the stage, as well as some extra money, which never hurts to have. Speaking of screws, though, I should note that there are maybe 2 occasions in the game where I cut out some grinding for screws, namely between stages, like between 2 castle stages later on, just to get the last upgrades, so on and so forth. Because this game does actively allow you to grind for screws, because you can return to any given stage you want at any point in time, more often than not, just in case you missed the letter, you want to go back for it. Or the secret discs in the case you're on your second playthrough. And admittedly, helping that you can do that is, compared to certain other Mega Man fan games, this game allows you to access the castle at any time you want. Also, Giant Axe completely destroys this super boss. They just go up and down their chains, firing their little bubbles at you at various arcs. Whenever you destroy the first one, the second one becomes faster, but it's still, the Giant Axe just completely destroys it. I don't know, what that was I on? Oh, right, the castle. Compared to other Mega Man castles, where once you're in it, you're stuck in it, in this game, if you close the game in between a stage after you've saved, you're sent back to the load screen when you can load back into it. And from there, you're sent back to the stage select, in which case, whenever you start the castle back up, you'll be sent back to the stage you're on. So you can actively save your progress in the castle here and grind if you need to. And now we got water currents. These are pushing you up. And that's about it. Once you do carry momentum with you, though, so you need to make sure that in case there's a jump like this, you need to ride the wave just well enough without falling in the pit that you can get enough momentum to clear whatever jump you're trying to make. This section sucks on the first playthrough because momentum platforming around spikes. Magic Missile makes that a lot easier, if you can't tell. It's like it does that for the entire game. One thing I am wondering about how it's progressing, if it is at all, though. I know Mr. Weird Guy, the developer of this game, uploaded to his YouTube channel about a year and a half ago now at this point, some footage of what looked to be test data for a Super Fighting Robot 2, and I'm wondering if that's gone anywhere in the time since. I only know there's like 2 videos and that we haven't really heard much from that since, because the dude is active on Twitter, but it's mostly personal and politics stuff, which you know what I can get down with, because it's the world, it's how life goes. Life is politics. Anyone else trying to tell you otherwise is either lying to you or selling you something, to paraphrase a certain movie that I absolutely love. I don't know what it is about water stages in Mega Man that make me just smile, though. Compared to most franchises where they get a lot of shit, people generally love Mega Man water levels. And ice levels, for that matter. Mega Man doesn't really have a stage game that people actively dislike. The closest we get is the occasional auto-scroller, which even then are very, very, very rare. Either way, it's time for Soakman himself, weak to the Zap Barrier, and this fight's gonna be quick because you can hit him several times with one Zap Barrier. He likes to jump all over the screen while shooting out his bubbles, which bounce around the screen as you would expect. He can also shoot some bubbles just straight forward. And he'll also use his Soak Rain attack, which sends 3 clouds horizontally from him at varying distances, which are constantly dropping rain. What you want to do there in that case, I believe, is just get on the opposite side of the screen. And for beating him, we get that very Soak Rain ability, which, as I just said, shoots forward 3 clouds that float up, which constantly release rain downwards. It can extinguish certain fires in certain stages. The best thing I've heard about this weapon, in terms of the way to describe it, is that it's what Thunderwolf from Mega Man 10 should have been. And you know what? They're not entirely wrong. And now it's time for me to purchase some upgrades because I've built up some more bolts at this point. I'm going to grab the boots and the buster, I believe. As for what those do in specifics, the boots increase your movement speed by 20%, your jump height by 10, and have spike damage, meaning they're no longer instant kill. And the buster charges your buster faster and stronger. And you can also, I believe, hold up or down to angle uncharged shots, similarly to the giant axe. But similarly, I can never get that to work for some reason. I'm convinced it has to do with the input program I use, input mapper, to make non-compatible games work with my controller. Because I have a couple different profiles, and none of them have ever been able to make those weapons work. So I'm thinking it has something to do with the program itself and the way it makes the buttons get held down. I know some people play Mega Man fan games with keyboard, and you know what? Respect to them for doing that, but I can't do that. The closest time I've ever been able to do that was during middle school, actually, when I was first getting into emulation, because my brother gave me FCEU Ultra, and a lot of the Mega Man games on the NES that came with it. And I remember distinctly being able to play even up to Super Nintendo games on that keyboard with no real issues for that computer we had at the time. Which is odd, because once I started doing stuff on my own computers, I started having that issue that apparently a lot of laptops have, where you can't hold down more than 3 buttons at a time without inputs being eaten. Either way, these are the fires I just mentioned. If you use the Soak Rain, they get destroyed. I don't think they're instant kill. I think the fires in this case just slowly drain you. Well, not even slowly. Just drain your HP 1 point at a time. The lava below us, though, is instant kill, and it operates on Mega Man 1 logic. If you get hit into it, you still die. And that there is a secret disc. You've seen a couple of these throughout the LP so far, but I haven't been able to grab one until right now, because the ones that showed up beforehand were already grabbed. There are, I think, 9 or 10 of these throughout the game stages, and I'm going to be grabbing every single one that I haven't grabbed thus far. But first, before I even talk about those, the obvious other gimmick with Coalman stage is that it has the timer bombs that we've been seeing consistently since Mega Man 4? 5? I know they're in 6. Maybe 5. I forget the exact game they premiered in. The important thing to note about the secret discs, though, and I think I've touched on this briefly the last part, is that they're not found in every stage. They're only found in specific stages. Not all of them are located in all the 8 Robot Master stages. Some of them are located in the castle stages, as we'll see later on. But as for what they all are, because there's nothing really spoilery about these in any regard, really. There's 1 HP mode, which is self-explanatory. Beta view, which basically turns the game into the original collision graphics that you would use in the engine testing. Levitation, which I believe allows you to slow down your falling speed by holding down a button. Doot Doot, which changes your general shot sound into a trumpet. It's stupid, but it's funny. There's one that skips you directly to the boss of any given level. There's one that maxes out your damage so that any shot you do of any weapon will do 28 damage, essentially being an instant kill too, and for everything. Hyperspeed, which makes you go at speeds that are nigh uncontrollable. Low gravity, which halves gravity as long as it's activated, which makes for very fun platforming, might I add, but also very hard platforming, where it really shouldn't be depending on where you use it. Proto Armor, which makes it so that you only ever take exactly 1 damage from any shot, and C-137 mode. It turns you into Rick from Rick and Morty. That's a thing. I have still only ever watched maybe 2 episodes of that show, because I watched some with a friend recently. I don't know what to think of it. It could certainly be entertaining, but it's one of those games where the fan base one of those series where the fan base kind of warned me off of it. Just because, God, that Szechuan sauce mayhap was just a mess. Although I just realized, on that note, BoJack Horseman's second half of the final season came out today. I know what I'm doing after this recording. Zap Barrier, by the way, makes getting through stages not easier, but it definitely makes things more comfortable in more dangerous segments like this. We're coming up on Coalman, though, and he is arguably one of the easiest bosses with his weakness because Soakman allows you to hit him multiple times with 1 shot because he stands still so much. Coalman likes to jump into halves and thirds of the screen, trying to attack you in various ways. The biggest one to worry about, beyond his usual fire shots where he shoots one forward and then one towards you, and his 3-wave, is what he does right now, where he's going to shoot a bunch of coal into the ceiling, which will then explode into various arcs around the screen. The thing to note about that fire, though, is that while yes, the main coal will damage you, so will the little fire residues it leaves. And that's Coalman's stage. It's fairly dangerous just due to the instant death all around you, but overall, nothing too bad. And for beating Coalman, we get Coal Barrage, the little fire attack you use there at the end. You launch several pieces of coal that fly in a bit of an arc in front of you, and leave a damaging trail of fire behind it. Notable though, in the case you use this weapon underwater, the fire is immediately extinguished even if the coals still travel forward, so it has some pretty limited use underwater. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're going to be heading after the final Robot Master before heading into this game's castle. See you guys then.